is 9:01. I will call this meeting to order. It's June 2nd. I want to make sure we're streaming. If you're willing and able, we would ask you to stand for the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. And I apologize, Pastor, I don't have my notes with your name. Would you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, Pastor Tim Hurst from Grace Revolution Church here in Wichita.
Excellent. We're happy to have you. Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you.
Pastor, the floor is yours.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought they was.
Appreciate the moment of silence, though.
Yeah, man. Hey, we need it right now. Amen. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, here we go. Let's pray with me. Father, we thank you and praise you for this day, Lord. God, we need you now more than ever. Father, with the pandemic that's turned our nation upside down, and now the injustice and the unrest that has just riddled our country since a week ago yesterday, Father. We just pray for your guidance, Lord. I pray over our city leaders in the name of Jesus. I pray that you would give them your spirit. I pray that you would give them your wisdom to lead our city. And God, I pray that they would lead boldly, Father God. I pray that where we need better leadership, you would move, God. And I thank you, Father. I pray over all of our healthcare workers, Father. I pray over all of our law enforcement, Lord, that you would use them in a powerful way during this time. So, God, as our city leaders move forward in this meeting this morning, God, I just pray that you would just give them your spirit, you would give them your thoughts, and you would give them your wisdom. We would pray that Wichita, Kansas would be a city that loves and honors God and honors his word. And Father, that we would look at one another, not by the color of our skin or by how much money we make, but we would look at one another just as people. So, Father, we give this time to you. Use us in a mighty and powerful way. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. And we all said, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk.
Approval of the minutes of the regular meeting on May 26, 2020.
Has every member had a chance to review the minutes? If so, is there any discussion or proposed changes to the amendments? See none. With that, I will make a motion to accept the minutes as printed.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion on said motion? If none, the clerk will open the roll. Members will cast the vote. With a result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion passes unanimously. I'm looking to see if we have any proclamations. We do. I'll probably have to get to them next week because I don't have them up here. Madam Clerk.
We have two people listed under the public agenda. The first one is Gerald Baker. Request a three-way stop sign and painted crosswalk at 9th and McLean for safe senior pedestrian access to river walkways.
And is this this person at Century 2 and willing to speak publicly, or?
There he is.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Welcome and good morning.
Good morning. Let me have this time.
Of course.
My name's Gary Baker, Gerald. I just want to talk a few minutes about getting a stop signal at 9th and McLean, because there have been many accidents up and down McLean, and one really fatal one at 9th and McLean about a year ago. And I'd like to just have everyone hear me that maybe you can, maybe you can work, I can work with you to get something done. If you can tell me how I can do that, then I'll be glad to work with you, because people can't cross that street without having without taking their lives in their hands just to cross the street to get to the bike and pedestrian path. And if you could just, listen to me and try to see that this is an important issue. I know there's crosswalks at 13th and there's crosswalks at Central, but some people can't get down that far to cross. And we should be able to cross. The public should be able to cross at 9th and McLean to safely cross. As I said, without taking their lives in their hands every day, just to go to a bike path that's public. So if you could please consider making that happen, I'd sure be glad to help in any way I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baker, for being here. Madam Clerk.
Jane Burns, promote walking and save walkability within Wichita.
Ms. Burns, welcome and good morning. It's good seeing you again.
Nice to see all of you. I belong to many organizations in Wichita, but today I speak on behalf of none of them. As a health professional, my first interest in walking and walkability was health. One important benefit of walking and walkability is that folks can improve their health by just stepping away from their TV sets and out their own front door. Folks don't have to pay for and drive to a gym to improve their health. My favorite quote from a physician I admire: if we had a pill that conferred the proven health benefits of walking, physicians would prescribe it to every patient. Hippocrates said, walking is the best medicine. Such an easy boost to personal and public health. Also to economic viability and quality of life, as we've seen in Wichita, when Wichita gave more and safer walkability to Old Town. So I started with health, and then I found the very, very big obstacle: safety. Starting in the 1950s, developers cut out sidewalks. East of Walliver and west of West Street, there are a few sidewalks. Seniors, those high blood pressure folks, students, they don't walk in the street. I visited with Gary, who just spoke recently. He and his neighbors cannot cross their own street, and their neighborhood has no sidewalks. And there are a few crosswalks. Those yellow lines that clearly shows cars, students, neighbors, where to safely share our streets. A wonderful Wichita department head told the Bike Ped Advisory Board that Wichita greatly reduced the painting of crosswalks in 2008, before his time and before the terms of any of you decision makers here today. You remember that last summer, some volunteers from Bike Walk Wichita and the KU School of Medicine worked with your excellent public work folks to paint crosswalks around 8 schools. 8 out of 100+ schools in Wichita. You know, about a third of Wichitans don't drive at all. Most students, many seniors, many disabled, many of the tourists we used to have, and now the unemployed who are out of gas money. How can any of those folks get to work, to groceries, to church? That is, some people want to bike and walk, and others need to bike and walk. But again, the big impediment for both is safety. I'm here to plead for better budgeting to keep these folks safe. Again, I don't speak on behalf of the Bike Ped Advisory Board, but I am pointing out their recommendations for Wichita's next operating budget. Their first 2 requests are for full-time staff to enable safety and access and opportunity for non-car transportation. A third request is what they call safe routes to school, painting crosswalks around schools for safety. Wichita spends very large amounts of tax money on cars and trucks, such as Kellogg and the future Northwest Expressway. I urge you to rethink that budget and to give low-cost protections for bicyclists and pedestrians. I urge you, decision makers and staff, to respect shared streets, healthy streets, especially now during this pandemic, and the very low cost of enabling fresh air walking and biking compared to new streets, new highways, even new buildings. In these lean budget times, thank you so much for your considerate inclusion of the health and safety and economic needs of these important and vulnerable constituents. Thank you very much. As you know, I'm always willing to help. Let me know.
Yes, Ms. Burns, thank you so much. And you're right on time. I think you had 5 seconds to spare, so thank you. We are actually going to
Talking.
we're actually going to defer over to Century 2, where I believe we have a couple of people in attendance who may want to speak. So, Chair recognizes Megan.
Hello, Mayor. Actually, those were our two public speakers. We do have some people in attendance this morning who may choose to speak on public agenda.
Excellent. Well, the floor is yours to facilitate that. If there are people who are over there who would like to speak.
Mayor, I think what we're hearing is there may be some people that want to speak on agenda items.
Excellent. Thank you. Sorry, my apologies. Megan texted me that people were there, and I assumed they wanted to speak at the open meeting, but we will keep them on our mind for the actual agenda items. So with that, onward to the agenda, Madam Clerk.
Consent agenda items 1 through 10.
Has every member had a chance to review consent agenda items 1 through 10? Is there any discussion or any motions to remove an item from the agenda? See that, I will make a motion to accept agenda items 1 through 10.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded by the Vice Mayor. There is no discussion on the agenda. On a motion, we will open the roll and cast our votes. The result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion does pass unanimously. Clerk will read.
Report of Board of Bids and Contracts dated June 1st, 2020.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, City Council members, Hannah Lang, Department of Finance, here to present the June 1st Board of Bid recommendations as well as the quarterly infrastructure report. First engineering bid we have is 2020 Sanitary Sewer Rehab Phase B. Recommendation is utility maintenance contractors for $232,592.50. Sanitary Sewer Extension to serve Bradley Fair 3rd Edition. Recommendation is to reject all bids. Water Distribution System to serve Meadow Lake Beach Edition Phase 3A. Donliner and Sons Constructions for Groups 1 and 2 for a total of $166,702. O.J. Watson Park Event Center, defer to June 8th Board of Bids date. Paving 33rd Street South to serve RF Edition. Recommendation is Kansas Paving for $264,734.05. Sanitary Sewer Improvements to serve Emerald Bay Estates 4th Edition Phase 2, defer to June 8th. Roof Replacement at Water Distribution Warehouse. Recommendation is AP Roofing and Specialty Coatings for base bids with add alternates 1 through 5 for a total of $158,356.21. Vehicle washes, Zips Car Wash for $9.95 per vehicle. Axon Live and Training Taser cartridges. Recommendation is Axon for $60,345. Office furniture for crime lab at Rounds and Porters, John A. Marshall Company for $70,620.19. So the quarter one 2020 infrastructure bid are reported quarterly at council meetings. For the quarter one, City Council approved infrastructure bids totaling $20,324,953 for 73% of the total bid awards of $27.8 million. In January, there was 7 bids awarded for $17.8 million. February, 6 bids awarded at $1.5 million. March, 8 bids at $885,000 for a total of 21 bids, totaling $20.324,953. The funding sources that were in the first quarter was special assessments, water utilities, sewer utility, general obligation, non-capital outlay. This is the purchasing procurement website, as well as the current open request for proposals that purchasing has. With that, we recommend the approval of the bid awards as recommended, and I stand for any questions.
Are there questions on the current item? Is there discussion? See none. With that, Chair, I recognize Councilperson, it's 5, so Councilperson Tuttle? No, that's...
I'd like to make a motion to approve the Board of Bids as presented.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Not sure if I called on the right person, I apologize. If there's no discussion on said motion, clerk will open the roll. Please hold a 7 yeas to 0 nays. The motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
Public hearing and resolution of letter of intent to issue industrial revenue bonds, Advanced Catastrophe Technologies, Inc.
Good morning, Mayor and City Council members. I'm Tim Goodpasture with the City's Office of Economic Development. For the record, the item before you today is a request for a letter of intent to issue industrial revenue bonds for Advanced Catastrophe Technologies, Incorporated. Advanced Catastrophe Technologies, or ACT, was formed in 2001 to provide disaster mitigation and reconstruction services for facilities that are suffering from water issues, fire, mold, or storms. The company is targeting industries such as commercial or retail developers, hospitality and student housing, owners of hotel systems, healthcare systems, and senior living systems. In essence, the company is trying to target developers or companies that have multiple properties where the company can come in, provide a disaster mitigation plan, and then should a disaster occur, come in, provide services to clean up the disaster, and ultimately reconstruct the facilities. The company has a network of over 500 contractors nationwide that they utilize to provide their services. The company is currently located in Bel Air in a 12,000 square foot leased facility near 37th and Woodlawn. They have a need to expand, but have not been able to find options in Bel Air that would be suitable for them to expand. The city does have, a letter from the city administrator from Bel Air stating that he understands that the company did look around in Bel Air but was unable to find a suitable facility to accommodate their growth. So the city of Wichita was not poaching the company. We were not targeting that company. They had actually approached us. The company currently has a contract to purchase land near Hoover and K96. In this area, you can see Hoover or 55th Street West on the left side of the aerial and K96 cutting through the middle. You can see Brooks Landfill in the upper right-hand corner. The area outlined in red is where the company has land under contract and is proposing to build its new facility. This is just an aerial from their architect that shows how the facility would lay out on that particular site. The company is requesting a letter of intent to issue industrial revenue bonds in an amount not to exceed $2,885,000. The funds would be used to construct a new 20,000 square foot corporate headquarters on that site. The bonds will provide a sales tax exemption on construction materials and a 5+5 year property tax abatement. There will be no property tax abatement for land. The company currently has 46 employees and projects that it will add 10 new employees over the next 5 years at an average annual salary of $44,400. Staff took the proposed economic development guidelines and applied those metrics to this project to show what that would look like. So for companies creating between 5 and 25 new jobs, they can qualify for a 30% abatement. With 10 new jobs, that's what the company would qualify for. Under the capital investment, if the company is investing between 1 and 5 million, a company could qualify for an additional 40%. Since they're investing $2,885,000, they would qualify for that additional 40%. And in addition, the company is utilizing state incentives, and under the additional considerations, that would qualify them for an additional 10%. So again, with 10 net new jobs, they would qualify for 30%. With the $2.8 million in capital investment, they would qualify for an additional 40%. And with the use of state incentives, they would qualify for an additional 10%, for a total of 80% under the proposed guidelines. Under the current policy, the company would qualify for a 56.75% abatement. The value of an 80% one-year property tax abatement to the city is approximately $15,700, and in total just shy of $60,000 a year. A cost-benefit analysis was completed by the Center for Economic Development and Business Research at Wichita State University, which showed an overall return to the city of 1.36 to 1, 1.24 to 1 for the city's general fund, and 1.61 to 1 for the city's debt service fund, all well above the 1-to-1 ratio in the proposed guidelines. Therefore, it is staff's recommendation that the City Council close the public hearing, adopt the resolution of intent, and authorize the necessary signatures. With that, I would be happy to stand for any questions.
Questions on the item? Maybe I will finally get the council member lined up with the right issue for the right district, and I want to thank Councilmember Tuttle. She's always kind of my go-to, I guess, when I get confused to make a motion. So this is in District 5. Is there a discussion from Century 2 or any people for public forum who would like to speak to this agenda item? All right.
No, Mayor, there's not.
Seeing none and seeing no further discussion, I will defer the floor to Councilmember Fry from District 5.
Thank you, Mayor. So I want to thank Advanced Catastrophe Technologies for choosing to keep their company in Wichita. This is a national organization that could have relocated to anywhere in the country, and I believe they were being recruited to move the company. Being able to keep them here in Wichita during this time and to actually grow is a blessing. I think this new policy demonstrates that we are listening to the small business concerns as it relates to our economic development guidelines, and this is something that's going to be a great benefit to Advanced Catastrophe, and hopefully others will follow suit. So with that, I'd like to make the motion to close the public hearing, adopt the resolution, and authorize the necessary signatures.
It's been a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
A second has been made by the Vice Mayor. If there's no discussion on said motion, clerk will open the roll. Members will cast their votes. With a result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Funding for the Aquatics Master Plan Phase 2 and Artist First Joint Addendum.
Welcome.
Good morning, Mayor and Council members. Gary Jansen, Public Works Engineering. The item before you this morning is a request for additional funding for the Aquatics Master Plan, as well as a contract revision for the artist work associated with the same. I'm going to talk a little bit about background, where we've been on this project overall, the scheduling for Phase 1 and Phase 2 in particular. Park and Recreation Director Troy Houtman is going to speak specifically about the 3 facilities within Phase 2, and then I'll wrap things up with the financial considerations. So, as you know, the Aquatics Master Plan, which was the overall plan, which was approved by the City Council in June of 2019, will guide $22 million in investments over the next 2 years for pool and water playground improvements. The first phases 1A and 1B construction contracts were approved by the City Council in April and May of this year and will be under construction soon, and I'll talk more about that in just a minute. Phase 2 will rehabilitate the pools at Manissa and Harvest Parks and will also convert the Linwood Park pool into a water playground. We are working on finalizing design for the Phase 2 improvements right now. We expect to be ready to bid that project as one project in July. We were hoping to beat that, working with our consultant to do everything that we can, but regardless, all Phase 1 and Phase 2 projects, outside of anything catastrophic happening, all projects will be completed, we estimate, by the first quarter of 2021 to be ready well ahead of the 2021 season. We want to get to the bidding phase of Phase 2 as quick as we can. It will help us determine where we're at overall financially based on the Phase 1 bids, and pending your approval of the additional funding that's in the CIP today, we'll know then what we've got left potentially for the final Phase 3, which would include the College Hill pool, the Harrison and Plainview splash pads. Harrison and Plainview, there are no facilities right now. College Hill is one of the newest pools in our system, and right now, based on the schedule that the City Council had seen previously, those improvements would be made with a Phase 3 between the 21 and 22 seasons. So nothing has changed on impact, obviously, except for the pandemic and what's impacting this summer. Beyond that, anything in 21 and 22 has not changed schedule-wise. Again, as I mentioned as part of the item today, the cost to complete the art design for this project has increased because of changes that were made during design, in particular, additional public engagement and working with the design council that we thought was necessary and turned out to be beneficial in getting to the point that where we're at today. And I'll talk more about those details soon. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Troy to speak specifically about the 3 facilities.
Welcome, Troy. Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, sir. Troy Hellman, Director of Parks and Recreation. So just to let you know, Gary touched a little bit. Mobilization's already started. Equipment has already started for Phase 1. So we have construction fencing going up at some of the pools already. So we're pretty excited about that. So the 3 sites for today, the first one is Harvest. And what I wanted to highlight in here is that the the bathhouse has recently been renovated, and so it's in pretty good shape. So the majority of the work is going to be going into the mechanical aspects of the pool with the other pools that we've been talking about as well. So new filtration systems, new disinfectant systems, new computerized systems so we can monitor the water a lot better. That will reduce labor and will reduce energy costs as well. So at this particular site, you'll see on the very far low right-hand bottom side, brand new area that's going to be added onto the pool. It's a zero depth entry that's going to have splash pads going off on there, some little fountains and a couple little slides. What also is going to be added onto it is in the deep end of the pool is a double loop slide. That's going to be an additional slide. And then on the very top right-hand side, you'll see a renovated slide that's going to replace the old outdated slide that we have right now. What we have added on to the edges of the pool area is very similar to what we've been doing in a lot of other parks, is adding these berms. These berms have been great in regards to places for people to sit and to relax. This is going to be a common theme at all of our pools. And so we see some here on the very bottom left-hand side and on the very top as well. And the next most important thing is adding shade to these pools. And so there's a couple of areas that you see that will be covering some shaded areas. Oops. All right. So next slide should be Manissa. There we go. All right, and so with Manissa Pool, we're going to be changing the 5 lanes into a 2-lane pool with a zero depth entry. That's going to be on the very bottom left-hand side. Again, you're going to be seeing some artificial berms put in place with some artificial turf to kind of just have seating areas and then some additional shade as well. Again, this pool is going to get a brand new mechanical system, pump, filtration system, disinfectant system, and a controller computer for it as well. The next site, we'll switch to the next one. Linwood is going to be changing from a swimming pool into a splash pad. This particular site is going to have a theme of a babbling brook or of a stream. The majority of the area is going to be 2 to 3 inches deep in regards to the river area, with some other areas that are going to get deeper for some splash areas. They'll be incorporating some sprays and then also a large water wheel to meet with the theme in regards to the water flowing through Wichita. So this is going to be primarily for the younger age groups. That's going to complement some of the other splash pads that we have that have some different themes. So these are the 3 sites that we're looking at for phase 2. I'll pass this back on to Gary.
Thank you, Troy. Last part of this we have for the council today. If I can get this to move. We are requesting the additional $8 million, which is in the adopted capital improvement program for 2020. Added to the currently approved budget will bring us to a total budget of $22,150,000. The additional artist design cost I talked about is just over $16,000, and that will be split between the 2 artists for a total design contract for each of them just over $42,000. With that, staff recommends that the City Council approve the revised budget, adopt the amending resolution, authorize the necessary signatures, and we would both be happy to stand for any questions.
Are there questions? Questions from the bench? See none. Is there discussion? See no discussion from the bench. Is there discussion from our folks at Century 2, Megan?
Sorry about that. No, there is not.
See none. All right, so with that, I will make the motion to take staff's recommended action to approve the revised budget and the artist's first joint addendum, adopt the amending resolution, authorizing necessary signatures. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded by the vice mayor. Clerk will open the roll. Members will cast their vote. The result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion does pass unanimously. Clerk will read.
Funding and change order limit adjustment for improvements to Pawnee from 119th to 135th Streets West.
Mayor and council members, again, Gary Jansen, Public Works Engineering. The item before you this morning is a request for construction funding for improvements to Pawnee from 119th Street to 135th Street West. Just some quick background. District 4 Advisory Board approved the design concept in November of last year, and the City Council did the same in December of 2019. The current roadway is 2 lanes. They're narrow lanes, a substandard paving section. This had been in the county at one time, was annexed into the city. There is increased development in this area, especially on the north side. We're projecting the traffic counts to double in the near future, especially depending on what happens with Goddard School District, because development is kind of trending wherever they happen to go. We've talked to the superintendent some, and they do have plans in the area. But again, I mentioned there's narrow lanes. You can see the patching work. I'm going to go back here one real quick. The city made an investment in with our maintenance funding in the last few years, just to hold everything together until we could get to this point. And you can see with the ditches throughout the majority of the project are non-recoverable. There has been some issues with accidents out there, even with the school bus ending up in the ditch. We really need to make some improvements here for safety more than anything. So just to explain quickly what you're looking at here. This is really what we would call a hybrid 2-lane section. Typically, we would look at possibly going to 3 lanes in this situation. We've done that a lot in the past and filling in both ditches. With looking at projected traffic counts, with looking at the limited number of access points throughout this mile, we came up with a hybrid design to still remain at 2 lanes with wider lanes. The north side, the red line you see, is underground storm sewer, so there will no longer be a ditch there. The south side would have an improved shoulder, so if anybody needed to get off the roadway, and the ditch would stay in place. And what we'll do with this design is set this up to be expanded to 3 lanes in the future without sacrificing any of the improvements that are being made now. And really, that's all I've got for now. We also are asking for an increase in the change order limit, as we do on many of these capital projects at this point in time, to increase the staff authority to 6%. With that, staff recommends that City Council approve the budget, amending resolution and change order modification, and authorize the necessary signatures, and I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Are there questions on the current item? See no questions. With that, the chair will yield the floor to Councilmember Bluebog as this item falls under the 4th District.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And I appreciate everything that everyone's done on this. This is probably the area I hear the most of in my district for safety concerns. Councilmember Fry and myself, Friday even, were involved. We did a Zoom with a government class where we have like 97, 98 students on there. Yep. And this question come up a couple times asking us about the access. Goddard School District has over 6,000 students. A lot of those students live in the city of Wichita. There's been numerous school buses run off the road here. My daughter was a kindergartner. I know you guys have heard this story, but she was a kindergartner when her bus ran off the road there, and she's now a 6th grader going into 6th grade, so I'm glad we're taking the action to correct this. So thank you, everyone, for helping make this happen. And I'd like to go ahead and make the motion to approve the budget amending resolution and change order modification resolution and authorize the necessary signatures.
Motion has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made and seconded by the Vice Mayor. There's no discussion on the motion. Clerk will open the roll. Members cast the votes. There we go. With a result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
2020 Justice and Mental Health Collaboration Program Competitive Grant.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, Council. I'm Captain Jeff Weibel with the Wichita Police Department. I'm the Bureau Commander for Patrol North. This morning I'm going to talk to you about the 2020 Justice and Mental Health Collaboration Program. It's a competitive grant. It's a 3-year grant of up to $750,000. The first year of the grant, there's a 20% match. Second year of the grant, there's a 20% match. And in the third year, there's a 40% match. This match will be in kind with existing resources from the Wichita Police Department, our partners at ComCare, and Sedgwick County EMS. The Integrated Care Team, ICT-1, initially began in August of 2019. This multidisciplinary co-responding team was modeled after other cities, Colorado Springs, Johnson County, along with some others. The team pairs up a WPA officer with an EMS paramedic and a ComCare clinician. The team responds to calls involving those suffering from mental illness and in crisis, or with co-occurring mental illness and substance abuse. The team also follows up with identified high utilizers of the 911 system and other mental health systems. In the past decade, the Wichita Police Department has seen a 44% increase in calls regarding mental illness and co-occurring mental illness and substance abuse in individuals. These calls overload multiple systems in our community. Since inception, ICT-1 has been able to divert nearly 500 911 resources to be available for other calls. During the initial trial period, ICT-1 has been able to divert 192 visits to the Crisis Observation Unit, 157 visits to the emergency room departments, and they've been able to treat in place 56% of their calls. This is 6% above the national average. The next slide will show you some statistics on that as well. If you can see, many of the calls that we used to respond to would involve involuntary hospital treatment, by being able to hand off to other agencies or divert and treat in place. That frees up a number of existing systems in our community. This grant will pay for one WPD officer. A sub-grantee will be Wichita Sedgwick County EMS, and it will provide for one paramedic. My partners from ComCare and EMS are here. The second sub-grantee will provide for a clinician through ComCare. We recommend that we approve the application to be submitted for this competitive grant so we can continue to sustain and support the integrated care team. The expected outcomes will continue to lessen the burden to 911 systems, our mental health systems, as well as our medical systems, ability to get needed help to those that are high utilizers of these systems, and the ability to continue to treat and place more people suffering from mental illness and co-occurring mental illness and substance abuse. And I'm available for any questions, as well as our partners from ComCare and EMS.
Of course. Just as a point of information, my understanding is I just got a text message from staff. There is nobody left at Century 2, therefore we will not be going towards Century 2 for public comment. So is there any question of the presenter at this time? Is anybody else who is here who wishes to speak to this program? Now we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Is there any comments or discussion? I will say the integrated care team has done an amazing job and has done amazing work of balancing community policing with mental health and ensuring that we have professionals who are trained in mental health who are adhering to those situations. So this is a great opportunity for Wichita to keep building on the progress we've made. Is anyone else who likes to comment on this? And if not, I will be more than happy to make the motion to take staff's recommended action to approve the 2020 Justice and Mental Health Collaboration Program grant application and authorize the mayor to sign the grant upon award. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded by the vice mayor. If there's no discussion on the motion, then clerk will open the roll. Members will cast their vote.
Whoops.
Do we have everyone?
I'm sorry. You
Looks like
clicked it and then
I
it
hit it.
disappeared.
It hit it and it went off, so.
So you're good.
Okay.
All right, let the record show that Councilmember Fry is actually in support. Did we close the roll, or is it 7 yeas to 0 nays is the result, unless I saw? So motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
CDBG funding allocation for case management homeless services.
Welcome and good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of council. This item seems timed well after the ICT presentation. Today I have for you a CDBG funding allocation from the CARES Act funding that we've received. So the city of Wichita is an entitlement city recognized by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and we receive federal funding for community development activities. Those activities include the Community Development Block Grant Program, Home Investment Partnership Program, and the Emergency Solutions Grant. The CDBG program in particular provides funding for governments to develop viable urban communities by providing decent housing, suitable living conditions for low to moderate income persons. In addition to our regular 2019 and 2020 allocation of just over $2.8 million, the city is receiving $1,725,897 in additional CDBG funding authorized by the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Securities Act, the CARES Act. The CDBG funding authorized under the CARES Act must be used to prevent, prepare for, and respond to COVID-19, the public health emergency. United Way of the Plains is the lead agency for Impact ICT, formerly the Wichita Sedgwick County Continuum of Care, and it's a local collaboration that addresses homelessness. Impact ICT is comprised of all homeless service providers and other agencies, interested agencies, government, and even formerly homeless individuals that do planning and provide services put together funding applications and other activities related to homelessness in our community. Impact ICT has identified a need for case management services that will assist identified homeless individuals and families in securing permanent housing in our community. This program will be part of the emergency preparedness effort to slow the spread of COVID-19 within the community, and particularly among the homeless individuals. The Housing and Community Service Department developed a funding application that was distributed to various organizations that make up Impact ICT. The organizations had to demonstrate capacity in providing case management services, and they must work with the Impact ICT's by name list of known homeless individuals in our community and help them secure housing and connect them to mainstream services. The case managers must also assist clients in maintaining housing and must mediate landlord and tenant issues. The Housing and Community Services staff reviewed applications and recommends the following funding applications: the Substance Abuse Center of Kansas at $80,188, Mental Health Association, $68,390, and United Methodist Open Door at $60,783. We saw this as a good balance of agencies that provide substance abuse, mental health, and general homeless services. Funding provided under the program will cover salaries and benefits for each case manager, telephone expenses, mileage, office supplies, and one additional barrier we're finding, which is application fees, security deposits, and expenses to obtain legal identification for clients. There's no impact to the general fund. The CDBG funding will be used through the CARES Act funding and will cover all expenses related to this activity. And it is recommended that the council approve the CDBG CARES Act funding allocation in the total amount of $209,361, approve the funding agreements, and authorize the necessary signatures. And I stand for any questions you may have.
Is there questions for the conferee? See none, we thank you. Very thorough presentation that has left us with no questions. This is an incredible step forward to working with our homeless population here in Wichita, and one of the council members who have had done great work with the homeless, I think deserves to make the motion for this, although she normally just makes the second. So with that, I would like to yield the floor to Councilmember Claycomb.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the City Council approve the CDBG CARES Act funding allocations in the total amount of $209,361, approve the funding agreements, and authorize the necessary signatures.
And in a moment of role reversal, I will second the Vice Mayor's motion. If there is no discussion on said motion, clerk will open the rolls, members will cast their vote. With a result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Substantial amendment to the 2019-2020 Annual Action Plan and 2019-2024 Consolidated Plan.
Good morning again, Sally Stang with the Housing and Community Services Department. Similar to the last item, today we have the public hearing for the substantial amendment to our consolidated plan and our annual action plan in order to incorporate the CARES money that was granted to the city. So once again, we are an entitlement community. We use this funding to align the city's goals of a livable and sustainable community, and the funds are used to create strong, sustainable, inclusive communities and affordable housing. He's fixing. Thank you. Again, in addition to our regular allocation of just over $2.8 million, we'll receive an additional $1,725,897 in CDBG funding in response to COVID-19 under the CARES Act. And in addition to our regular allocation of emergency solutions grant funding of only $238,128 a year, the city will receive $850,376 in additional ESG. That almost 4 times our normal allocation shows they're expecting a huge impact of COVID-19 amongst our homeless population. The funding that we received, we can use through the period of September 30th, 2022. CDBG authorized under the CARES Act, again, must be used to prevent, prepare for, and respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. And all of our proposed activities fall within the public services category. So we are proposing supplemental assistance to our domestic violence shelters, providing an additional $75,000 across all 3 organizations we currently fund. That represents about a 30% increase in their regular allocation. And it is our intention to increase their 2020 funding as well from the CARES Act, funding that will come with our 2020 annual action plan. Developing a personal protective equipment voucher program to provide $150,000 over a 2-year period to provide vouchers to nonprofit organizations or small businesses that employ low-income workers or small businesses serving low-income neighborhoods to obtain personal protective equipment. The case management services previously noted from the last item. The last item was the funding allocation for 1 year. We're suggesting 2 years, so it's a total of $420,000 allocation. The remaining $735,718 is set aside to create other activities to prevent, prepare for, and respond to COVID-19. Because the funding is expected to last us through 2022, and we don't know what type of hit we'll see in a second wave or a third wave, we want to be sure not to allocate all of the funding up front. In addition, we're allowed administrative costs at 20% of the total award. ESG funding authorized by the CARES Act, again, prevent, prepare for, and respond to COVID-19. I think I'll have that memorized for the rest of my life. We previously awarded Humankind Emergency Shelter with 2 grant amendments, $60,000 each, to operate the what was the winter shelters, the emergency overflow shelter, for the months of April and May. The United Way Hotel Motel Voucher Program previously allocated at $300,510 to provide hotel vouchers for the homeless that are either being tested for COVID-19 or have tested positive so that they can safely quarantine. $194,829 set aside for future items that may pop up. And we're allocating an additional $150,000 set aside for homeless prevention activities to provide emergency rent assistance to individuals and families at risk of being evicted. Under ESG, we're allowed 10% of the award for administration for $85,000. There is no impact to the general fund. It is recommended that the council close the public hearing for the substantial amendment to the first year annual action plan and consolidated plan, approve the substantial amendment to the 2019-20 first year annual action plan and consolidated plan, and approve the funding allocations and authorize the necessary signatures. And I stand for any questions.
With that, the chair recognizes Council Member Tuttle.
Thank you, and not a question, just a moment of praise. As my past career, I've been a grant seeker and a grant maker, and I tell people giving money away is harder than getting money. And so it truly is heartwarming to see other organizations in our community benefit from this, and I know it was a lot of hard work for you and your staff to put it together. The other thing that warmed my heart was to see that we have so many we can put aside, because no one knows what the next waves will be, what the rest of 2020 will bring us, and as we go forward. So kudos for thinking about that as well. So great job.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions? Is there any, doesn't appear to be any questions from the public. I just want to echo the sentiment of the council member and just say that $75,000 that are going, extra money going to our domestic violence shelters, I know will be put to great use and appreciated by the people who run those organizations. It's want to thank you for seeking these funds. With that, I'm actually going to defer the floor to Councilmember Tuttle for a motion as she spoke so eloquently to this item.
Thank you. I would like to make a motion that we close the public hearing, approve the substantial amendment to the 2019 through 2024 consolidated plan, the substantial amendment to the 2019 through 2020 first year annual action plan, and the amendment to the citizen participation plan, and authorize all the necessary signatures.
There's been a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded by the Vice Mayor. If there's no discussion of said motion, then a clerk will will open the roll and members will cast their vote. With a result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion does pass unanimously. Madam Clerk.
Professional services agreement.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor and council members. Jennifer Magana, City Attorney. The item before you is a contract to engage legal services. A portion of the Northwest Water Facility is being financed by the state of Kansas and through the revolving loan program. And the state has approved the city's application for the loan and is now currently working on execution of the loan structure itself. City utility staff are working with KDHE and the Kansas Development Finance Authority to finalize the loan structure. To fund the loan, this KDFA will issue and market bonds. Normally, the city's general bond counsel, which is currently Gilmore Bell, would advise and assist the city in structuring the terms of this state revolving loan and would provide legal options and opinions in connection with the loan closings. However, because Gilmore Bell also serves as bond counsel for the Kansas Development Finance Authority, the KDFE has requested that the city engage separate bond counsel. Triplett, Wolf & Garrettson is a local law firm that provides municipal finance services and has worked with the city of Wichita in this area before on a number of financings. City purchasing staff has negotiated pricing with Triplett, Wolf & Garrettson, and the terms are set forth in the city's standard professional services agreement before you today. This agreement would be coterminous with the loan structure. It would involve five separate loan installments. So this agreement would be for 5 years and is an amount not to exceed $191,000. Depending on the amount of each separate loan installment, the price is subject to renegotiation. J.T. Klaus of Triplett, Wolf & Garrettson Law Firm is here today and is also available for questions, as am I. Would recommend that you approve the agreement and authorize the necessary signatures for this item. Thank you.
And we're going to open up for questions and discussion. Councilmember Bluebog.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Can you educate me here? Do we go out and solicit an RFP, or do we speak with other law firms, or how do we go about selecting someone for this? What's the process?
Yeah, in this case, we look at experience and specialty. This is a special area of practice. We worked with purchasing to identify a law firm that would provide these services. This was not an RFP situation, though.
Okay, thank you.
So other comments, discussion, or questions? See none. With that, I will make the motion to take staff's recommended action to approve the agreement and authorize all the necessary signatures. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded by the Vice Mayor. Clerk will open the roll. Members cast their vote. I double tapped it. There we go. With a result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
20 ride non-expiring passes for $20.
Director Tan, welcome.
Good morning, Mayor.
Morning, sir.
Morning, council members. Wichita Transit would like to ask permission to be able to sell 20 ride non-expiring passes for $20 for during the time frame of our normal free ridership for students that we provide every summer, which will start, which actually started last week and will continue on through August 18th when school goes back. A little bit of background, as we all know, Wichita residents due to COVID-19 are facing a reduction of resources. Transportation costs continue to create barriers to mobility and access, and our proposed 20-ride non-expiring passes would significantly reduce the cost per trip to the consumer. Our passes would go on sale starting today, if permitted, and go through August 18th, which is again the same window for our free passes for students on our system entirely during the summer months. This pass, being different from the other passes that we have on multiple trips, does not expire. Currently we have 7-day passes, we have 30-day passes. All of those expire at the end of the day. These will not expire, they will continue. So if somebody who is a non-daily user, this is a very cost-effective way to have transit as an option for transportation purposes. The rate that we're talking about at $1 per trip represents 57% less than the full fare that someone would pay to ride a current bus. This is 100% reimbursed through the CARES Act. We are estimating that during this period, we should sell up to 5,000 passes. At that number, we estimate the reimbursement to be about $65,000. A few weeks ago, I presented to you about Saturday free ridership, and you were kind enough to allow us to continue that. And as you can see, the ridership on Saturdays has gone up since you permitted us to do that. So I think obviously that the ridership is coming back, and also some of the programs that we're instituting are being successful. So I just wanted to put that in front of you so that you can see that the fine work that you did by approving that is having a positive impact on the citizens of Wichita. And with that, I would ask that City Council approve our ability to sell those passes for $20 between now and August 18th. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Vice Mayor Clayco.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have a question. I just want to say thank you, Mike. We've asked you to really look at this and be innovative in ways that we might help the community during this time, and I really appreciate what staff has done, so thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Clendenin.
Mr. Tan, thank you so much for your leadership on this. I think this is extremely important for a lot of different reasons I've stated in the past, but one question that I do have is, on these passes, does that include any transfers, just for the public?
We currently do not have transfers. Most of our trips are single trips, as in they get on a bus and they go to their destination, they get on the destination and return back. So most of our trips are single ride. Transfers were eliminated in 2016. Perfect. So currently right now, as I say, this would just be for a single ride. And it's also available for half ride, so our disabled and our seniors will be able to utilize this as a half fare. They show their ID when they purchase the pass, they'll be able to buy it for $10. So that's actually extremely good benefit.
Excellent, thank you.
Very welcome.
That's awesome. Other comments on this? Before I make the motion, I do want to just recognize and thank Councilmember Johnson and Councilmember Fry for their support of increasing opportunities for affordable public transportation during this time of COVID. And if there's no further comments on this, then I will make the motion to approve the Wichita Transit to provide 20 ride passes for $20 from June 20th through August 18th, 2020. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded by the Vice Mayor. If there's no discussion on said motion, clerk will open the roll. Members will cast their vote. With the result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion does pass unanimously.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk.
Police Patrol East Station Construction RFP Criteria.
Good morning,
sir. Mr. Mayor. Alan King, Director of Public Works and Utilities. Good morning, Council. We're at the next step of building our new Police East Patrol Station. And we come to you today to move along in that process. Just by way of background, it's just north of the current police and fire station, next to the Dole VA, and located on Kellogg and Edgemore. It's on an underdeveloped park property, and the effort here is to build a new patrol station. We looked at it from a functionality standpoint and came up with a number that was significantly greater than the budget that we had for this. So what we have done is worked closely with police chief and his staff, Mr. Chief Ramsey, and came up with some very imaginative ways to get the same sort of functionality, but at a significantly reduced price, so that we can get it at the $7 million budget number that we're currently working with. Because the budget is constrained, and we want to make sure that we have a police substation that meets the needs off into the future, we've been using this approach, which is, we go ahead and advance the slide here. We actually awarded the design contract to GLMV back in December of last year through the process that I've just described. And what that included was to pause at about 50% construction or design, and at that point then select a construction team. And the construction team is the construction management at risk model, which is basically getting experts as a team together and to provide the city with a guaranteed maximum price. This is necessary because of the constraint on the budget amount. So we're at the 50% design now. We think we've got a good design and some options for meeting the budget. And so now what we're doing is going out on an RFP for that construction management at risk work and to get a guaranteed maximum price. Charter Ordinance 228 requires that the City Council approve the selection criteria in this kind of a project delivery approach. And so that's what we're doing today, is we're bringing forward to you, first of all, to get okay with the RFP, but also to get an approval of the design, the selection criteria. What we have is 55% weighting in the selection criteria is the guaranteed maximum price, but it's not just the lowest price. It is, a lot of it has to do with that, but it's also the teams using their imagination, their innovation to come up with alternate costs and value engineering ideas to make sure that we can maximize what the functionality and how this is going to be used into the future for police, and how that fits in with the costs that will be considered. So that's a very important part of this selection criteria. Also looking at experience with similar projects. So what projects, not only building projects, but ones that are really closer to the kind of building that we're talking about with the kind of features that they have. References from projects, have they completed similar projects, and what was the evaluation of their performance? Their project management approach, which is how they're going to actually conduct the project. Planning, coordination of safety plans is very much along those same lines. And then finally, participation of emerging and disadvantaged businesses, and that is also considered in the weighting. So with this kind of a weighting, we will be, with your approval, issuing the request for proposal, and then engaging with a selection committee to actually engage the services. And we'll be bringing that contract back to the council in the future for your approval. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Other questions for staff? There's a whole bunch. Chair recognizes Council Member Tuttle.
Thank you, Gary. I appreciate it. And I'm very excited. Even though this is in District 1, it also serves District 2. And if you go there, they're in desperate need of a new facility. And it's a great opportunity also to partner with Park and Rec and Million nearby. Just a quick question. I know one thing that we've talked about in the past here significantly is just making sure that we get a broad scope and have the opportunity to get many RFPs. How will that be promoted? How will we, ask people to apply?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Tuttle, we're advertising it, but we're also making sure that we engage the word of mouth, if you will, of the architectural community. They were involved in an RFP process, and also to reach out to structure this way, the RFP in such a way that it attracts as many construction companies as possible. So we're trying to make it construction company friendly, not just a CMAR company friendly. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Councilmember Fry.
Thank you, Mayor. Alan, along those lines, and I know we get this question asked of us every time we have a large capital improvement project about local preference. So was there any consideration for local preference in the weighting criteria?
Only in the way that it would come out in terms of prior projects and, in other words, and references. But really, we're doing it, looking at the pricing and the qualifications and using local participants only as a tiebreaker. And so if we have two that are just exactly right, nose to nose, then that could be a factor that would be used in having a preference of one over the other towards the local contractor. But because things are so tight, we're really looking at price and qualifications on this project.
Mayor, Councilmember Fry, the issue of local preference has been discussed by the council off and on over the last probably 5 years. The council has not adopted local preference policy, even though I think we drafted one at one point. So if the council wants us to have that as a consideration, this would be the time to introduce that factor so that, similar to what we do with DBEs and EBEs, that would be a consideration, some percentage consideration of the total scoring.
Has there been a percentage discussed or at any point?
We range anywhere from 1% to 10%, if I remember the discussions.
Okay. But Alan, you're saying that there's a procedure in place that there would be a tiebreaker if it was everything equal?
I don't think I would characterize it as an actual formal procedure.
Okay.
Just the practice of a selection committee is only in that very rare event that you had a tiebreaker, that could be one of the factors that were considered in coming to the actual selection.
Right, okay.
My apologies. When you said okay, I thought you were finished.
Oh,
Don't mean
sorry.
to interrupt, Councilmember. Please pardon me.
No, so, and again, on this project, maybe not as critical as it would be on a water treatment facility, which is, or an airport build, which are so specialized. But this one being more, and again, I know it's a police substation and it has its own intricacies and uniqueness, but with this being a challenged economy right now and being able to support our local construction as much as possible, I personally would like to see some type of consideration for local preference, whether it be a 1% or as much as 5%. I don't know where the best place for this to come out of would be. I mean, I can certainly see maintaining that emerging in DBE and the safety plan and all those. I mean, I defer to you as to where the best place to maybe take that out from would be.
Would you go back to the slide that shows the percentages? If you look at these items, and I'll let Alan weigh in, if you're going to assign it arbitrarily, say 5%, probably would reduce the first category down to 50% and then add the local share. In doing that, what I'd ask you to think about is, if that's the direction you want to go, and of course, I think you're right, a project like this is more inclined to be bid or that we would select a local contractor just by the nature of the work. But if you did introduce that element, I would like you to think about local or those that, and local defined as not just in the region, but state of Kansas, or possibly from states that have reciprocal agreements as well.
So I agree. I think it's a little difficult to make sausage from the bench here on something like this. And because of this one most likely being a local construct, I think I'll pass on the opportunity to put in language right now, but maybe ask staff to work on a proposal to come back to us for future projects along this. Again, I defer to the rest of the council, but I think it's maybe time that we start thinking about something like this, especially on CMAR projects or just any large capital improvement project. So
with that, I'm going to also add some input to this, as I believe that there is an economic benefit by keeping money within our own local economy. There's a multiplier effect that I'm not sure is being calculated with this current formula. There was in the legislature an act called the Buy Kansas Act, and there were variables and measurements in there to favor Kansas companies or local companies, while also having triggers where if it didn't make fiscal sense to utilize a local company, if we just couldn't get the same results that, where it wasn't responsible for taxpayers, it allowed us to go outside of what was local. So I would ask staff to look at some of the criteria in the Buy Kansas Act that was presented a few years ago in the legislature. And if you need help tracking that down, I can help you because I was a sponsor of it. You have the microphone. It looks like you wanted to speak, Mr. Manager. So
It was a fine piece of legislation, yes.
Yes, it was, yes.
All we really have to do is dust off our previous proposal, because at that point, we weren't looking at percentage breakdown like this. We were saying, I think if I remember right, if the proposals or bids from a local company were within a certain percentage of the lowest bid, then we would then go with local. We'll bring that back for your consideration, and we'll also look at, when we have an RFP criteria like this, how the percentage breakdown should look. So we'll look at 2 different alternatives.
Excellent. And just to add in, for discussion when it comes to creation of policy, on line 2, where it says experience with similar projects, we could also write similar projects in community, where we also value someone's understanding of our local economy and local community, which could fit into that 15%. That might also help us not only with hiring local, but also ensuring that we have local people who can help make the design fit the community standards the best. So I think there's a few avenues that we could take with this, and I look forward to working with staff on that. With that, we have 2 other people currently who want to speak to this topic, so I will yield the floor to Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I do agree with Councilmember Fry on that and would look forward to seeing that type of policy. The only thing I just wanted to encourage, I know for number 6, emerging and disadvantaged business, enterprise participation is 5%. I always encourage higher than that. I know that's our minimum, but I would love to see a little more with that, because again, when you look at minority businesses who historically haven't been engaging as much, and I know we're working on increasing that, but just my thought.
And with that, I agree. I think that if we were to adjust line number 2 to also have somewhat of a experience with the community, it might actually favor some of the local businesses that are minority owned as well. My speaker list is clear. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this topic? See none. With that, I will defer to Councilmember Johnson as this item falls within District 1.
Thank you, Mayor. I would move that the council approve the request for proposal selection criteria for construction services of the new Patrol East station.
There's been a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded by the Vice Mayor. Clerk will open the roll. Members will cast their vote if there is no discussion on said motion. With a result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
CMAR criteria, Aviation Fuel Storage and Distribution Facility Rehabilitation Project, Eisenhower National Airport.
Welcome, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Put this away and back this off a little. John Oswald, Airport Engineering and Planning Manager. Today I'm going to present to you the fuel farm improvements at Eisenhower National Airport. A little background: in mid-January this year, the authority approved using the Construction Management at Risk CMR delivery process per the Charter Ordinance 228. And the Charter Ordinance calls for the selection criteria to be confirmed or modified as appropriate for the project. Presented to you today is proposed selection criteria, 5 main categories and some subcategories or bullets. Firm experience, prior similar projects to what we're proposing using the CMAR method, and prior project references. Second major category, the project management approach. Pre-construction includes pre-construction, construction planning, coordination, safety plans, identification, solution of project challenges, the process used to solicit subcontract bids, the process used to establish the guaranteed maximum price, and available bonding capacity. Staff experience and utilization, looking at similar projects and timeline those projects occurred, and for the proposers to provide us an organizational structure how they're proposing to staff this project. Fees would include the pre-construction services, the general conditions, and the construction management services. and then the City of Wichita's Emerging Business Enterprise Program. I didn't list the percentages. I can go through that if you like, but they're on the screen. Recommendation to the governing body is to confirm or modify the selection criteria. Stand for questions.
Are there questions or comments? Councilmember Fry.
Thank you, Mayor. So as evidenced by the last project, this one has greatly different ratios as it relates to the criteria.
Right.
And I can only imagine it's because of the uniqueness of this project versus another capital project.
Exactly, yes.
And it's because of the fuel farm system itself. I just want to make sure people understand what we're building here versus the last project.
It's a major renovation. The fuel farm itself has been there since the 1950s, but it's a major renovation and very critical services that we need to provide at the facility.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Thank you, sir. Seeing none. With that, I will make the motion to accept staff's recommendation to approve the selection criteria or provide additional modified criteria. Is there a second? Actually, it looks like we have are you on to speak, Madam Vice Mayor?
I'll second that, but then
Speak to the motion.
Yeah.
Chair recognizes the Vice Mayor, Councilmember Clayco.
thank you. Sorry I didn't get in there sooner, Mayor.
You're fine. We're now speaking to the second, speaking to the motion.
Yes, to the motion. I'd like to go back and think a little bit about this local preference on this one again, too. So what is it's not in the criteria. Is it like the last project where it's a tiebreaker, or how do we handle this one?
Well, I don't know of any city policy that calls that to be a tiebreaker.
Right.
So I guess I don't have a good answer for you on that. It's not city policy for local preference. I think it sounds like something is perhaps in the works, but we did not factor that into this project. We are heavily needing somebody very experienced and qualified to help us in this project. We have to do it right.
Okay.
So regardless of where the company comes from.
And Mr. Manager, can we take a second look at the criteria in hopes of encouraging local preference, as we know that spending money within our local economy has a multiplier effect. If we could get a similar product while stimulating our local economy, I think that's preferable. Is there something in the works that we can consider that maybe dovetails off our last conversation we had?
Mayor, this is a little more difficult of a project because of the requirement for specialization, and we are aware of others that are interested in the project, have not had similar experience. I think the closest they came was replacing gas tanks for service stations and convenience stores. I'm wondering if the council does want to factor in local participation. The question is, could we put a bullet point in regarding the use of local contractors both as the prime and as sub, and that could be in terms of the project management approach, or, John, I'm sorry, if you could go to the next slide.
This one?
Yeah, that may be the best place to put it, so that we're not necessarily giving preference to folks that don't have significant experience with this kind of work, but they're using subcontractors that make sure that we keep dollars in the local economy. And so we would put it in, again, John, if you go back, we'd put it in, yes, back one. We'll put it in as part of the project management approach at this point, and we can make it a stated criteria bullet point. And that would be either the prime contractors local, or that there's substantial involvement of local contractors in the subcontract work, something to that effect.
And that, I think, would achieve the goal of having that balance of quality, skilled work, while also ensuring that we have as much local circulation of our taxpayer money as possible. I am unsure if, and Vice Mayor just got on my list, so maybe she'll clear us up, if we would need a motion for that, and if so, we're debating a current motion. So I think I would have to retract my motion to approve as is and ask for the Vice Mayor to retract her second, and then we can make that primary motion. And as I said, she's on the list, so she might actually know more, but I'll defer to the manager.
I think the council in the past has allowed an amendment to the existing motion, as long as the person who seconded it also agrees to the amendment, then you can vote on the amended motion.
Very good. Vice Mayor Clayco.
So I just wanted to comment that what the manager proposed, I would be in favor of that as a second if you added that as an amendment.
Of course. Well, with that, given the advice of the manager and the concurrence of the vice mayor, I would revise my motion to accept with the addition of the advice of the manager. I want to make sure I don't word it wrong. Mr. Manager, what would you recommend be the best way to word this amendment so that it fits with the current intent?
Again, this would be a statement of intent, not exact wordsmithing of what we put in the document, but you'd add a 6 criteria under project management approach that would recognize participation by local contractors in the project.
Excellent. So,
Or local contractors / subcontractors.
Local contractor, the recognition of local contractors / subcontractors under as a 6th condition under project management approach, and this would be a recommendation. And it has been seconded or seconded on top of the second. We definitely have this thing seconded. So if there's no further discussion, we'll go ahead and open up the roll. Members will cast their vote. With the result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Mid-Continent Aviation Services, Inc., Use and Lease Agreement, Wichita Dwight D. Eisenhower National Airport.
Good morning.
Good morning. Morning, Mayor, members of council, Brad Christopher, Assistant Director of Airports. I'm delighted to bring this item before council today for your consideration. It's Mid-Continent Aviation Services Use and Lease Agreement. Little background. Mid-Continent Aviation Services, or MCAS, has been a tenant on Eisenhower Airport since 2010, operating as a full-service maintenance, repair, overhaul, or MRO facility. MCAS is a subsidiary of ICM. You all may also know of ICM as a local company. It's nationally known and reputable for their leadership technology in the ethanol industry. They previously subleased the facilities from the Wichita Airport Facilities, Inc. for the past 10 years, and now hold a direct lease with the Wichita Airport Authority, which was approved as an assignment from WAF to ICM as of September 1. They provide aircraft services as an FAA-approved Part 145 repair station. They service a number of aircraft brands, including the Beech Cessna Hawker product line, Learjet, Gulfstream, Quest, and Robinson helicopters. They're also a factory authorized service center for the Quest Kodiak and Robinson R-44 and 66 helicopters. Some of the key financial business terms proposed in this agreement. Lease term, we call initial base term of 5 years. There's 5-year renewal options. Leasehold is about approximately 250,000 square feet total property. Building improvement space facilities about 63,000. Initial land rental rate of 15 cents per square foot. Facility rental for the structures, $1.57, and that nets $136,194 annual revenue during the initial term. Total initial lease revenue, first 5-year term, that's $680,000. Moving on, the rates increase each 5-year period during those renewal option terms. Land rent incrementally moves to 35 cents per square foot. And facility rent will migrate to $1.75 in the first option period. And then rents will incrementally increase to levels closer to the market value as the duration goes on.
Rental rates reflect consideration of about $1.2 million that ICM, MCAS, has previously spent on capital improvements on the property, in addition to additional improvements that they plan to invest their private dollars into. MCAS may obtain airport special facility revenue bond financing in order to qualify for the sales tax exemption on certain qualifying construction costs. And I'll mention for that the lease agreement simply recognizes their ability to apply for that for qualifying improvements. It still has to go through that same project, but based on the advice of council, that's included in the lease agreement just to recognize their ability to do that. MCAS currently employs 17 full-time staff, and it's expected to increase that as the market expands. Airport staff is very excited to partner with this locally owned business, and we look forward to a long and successful relationship and the economic opportunities it will provide. And our recommendation is for board approval. And I'm happy to answer any questions council may have.
Are there questions from the council to staff at this time? See none. Is there discussion? See none, I will go ahead and make the motion to accept staff's recommended action to approve the agreement and authorize the necessary signatures. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded by the vice mayor. If there's no discussion on said motion, clerk will open the roll. Members have cast their vote. With a result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, if there is no objection, I would like just to briefly return and get a clarification of the $20 or 20 passes for $1 item. It was just brought to my attention by a text message that the motion might have been made to start on June 20th, when June 2nd is the intent. So I wanted to clarify that the motion was as printed, that it is starting at June 2nd.
Okay, fine.
Is that
The
good?
motion listed here is for June 2nd through August 18th. I'd have to listen to the tape back to hear whether you said the
Of
second.
course. I just got a text message from staff, so I wanted to definitely clarify that to ensure that we can get this great program off and running with no hiccups.
Right.
So,
Got it.
so with that, Madam Clerk.
Council member appointments and comments.
All right, let's open up to appointments and comments. Vice Mayor Claycomb.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a comment. We'd not held a DAB meeting in quite some time, and so last night was our first DAB meeting since the pandemic, and we held it virtually, and I think it went pretty well as those can go, but we had people from the community as well as our DAB members there, and so I just wanted to compliment my DAB, and I'm sure others have the same experience, and the community for being patient with us as we navigate these waters. So thank you.
Councilmember Tuttle.
Thank you. I just wanted to address something that you've probably seen in the media the last couple days. Unfortunately, due to circumstances related to COVID-19, our bike share ICT program is going to be evolving and changing. The vendor that we've been using for the past 3 years, as a matter of fact, May was the 3-year anniversary of bike share ICT, is going through bankruptcy because of lack of ridership during COVID. And so I do want to thank everyone for their patience and thank everyone for their questions. I know we had an outpouring of people texting me yesterday asking what's next. And I can assure you that our really qualified staff at Transit, Director Tan and Scott Wadle, who's a true advocate for walking and biking as safe and reliable forms of transportation and not just recreation, are working diligently to see if we can find a new vendor. So I'm confident that Bike Share ICT is just taking a small hiatus, but hopefully we'll be back again. Just some highlights that most people may not know. We have riders from all 50 states from Bike Share ICT, so people really do use it when they come to visit. We had some of the highest ridership per capita in the nation during the last 3 years. So excited to see the program come back and be as successful as ever. So if anyone has questions or needs additional information, they can certainly reach out to me, but of course reach out to Transit, who is really responsible for the program and doing a great job in the transition.
Other comments at this time? Board appointments. With that, I will make some board appointments if the council would indulge. I would like to, for the historic, and Madam Clerk, I will have a list for you.
Thank you.
For the Historic Preservation Board, I would like to appoint Bruce Rowley. For the Library Board, I would like to appoint Abby Boatman. For the Wichita Airport Advisory Board, I would like to appoint Jonathan McRoy. Those are all new appointments. For the Wichita Sedgwick County Access Advisory Board, I would like to reappoint Lisa Veda. For the Sedgwick County Community Corrections Advisory Board, I would like to reappoint Mary San Martin. For the Sedgwick County Community Corrections Advisory Board, I would like to appoint Sarah Alexis Feeney Tolson. And for the Sedgwick County Juvenile Corrections Advisory Board, I would like to appoint AJ Bohannon, my apologies. Almost made it through without messing up anyone's name, which is, by the way, my Achilles heel. Those are the official appointments to standing boards, and I would also like to create a Mayor's Advisory Council on Diversity, Inclusion, and Civil Rights. Given the discussions and the actions and not just within our community, but throughout our country, with diversity, inclusion, and civil rights, I think is more important than ever to ensure that our community has a direct link to the policy side of our government, which is the side that we are on. And with that, I have created a list of activists, of people within our community who have nominated others, of pastors, of people who have agreed to step up and step out to serve on such a council for a 3-month term that we will meet once every 2 weeks via Zoom for 3 months, in which I hope to reappoint some of these members or to give other people a chance to serve. This will follow a similar format as the Mayor's Advisory Council on Small Businesses, as we discussed reopening because of COVID. The goal of this is to talk about what we're doing well as a city, what we're not doing so well, and how we can improve with the hope of having some action steps that could be presented to the council or presented as more of a community network solution. I do want to also mention that sometimes I have a really good group and I make these appointments, and then it comes to my attention that there's some other people who should be on this as well. So it is my intent to make these initial appointments and to possibly make another round of appointments next week if needed. And for those who are interested in serving on this council or any of the councils moving forward, really the criteria, I think some people have asked me about what do I have to do to get on this. It's just shooting me an email. Shoot me an email with a couple of lines of what you do and why you want to be on this council. And to be honest, we need all hands on deck when it comes to bringing Wichita to the next level. So if there is someone who is interested to serve, not just in this capacity, but in other capacities, and they reach out, you will be added to a list, and we'll be happy to put you to work for the betterment of our community. So with that, I will go through these names, and again, I will be handing this list over to the clerk, and I apologize if I get anyone's names wrong. So the first appointment will be Councilmember Brandon Johnson, who will serve as a co-chair of this and of this committee. And I'm just going to go through the names. Devontae Harris, Pastor Pam Mason, Reverend Kevin Graham, Elisa Sanchez, Karen Casey, LaWanda DeShazer, Charkil Azimi, Emily Skotlandker, it's German, so pardon me. Marquita Atkins, Abby Boatman, Sean Gates, Chad Rico, JJ James, Faith Martin, Nog Vaughn, Brandon Trotter, Dalton Glasscock, Reverend Willie Scott Jr., Huzam Mahdi, Alan Stoker Jr. And that concludes the first round of appointments to this committee. Is there any discussion on the appointments of this or to the standing committee? Are there any members who wish to make appointments of their own at this time? See none, I will make a motion to appoint to the standing committee the members mentioned, and also the creation of a mayor's advisory committee on diversity, inclusion, and civil rights with the names mentioned appointed to such committee. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by Councilmember Johnson. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Claycomb.
Yes, Mayor. I am surprised and a little frustrated and disappointed because I have nothing in my packet about this new committee or council. The community's had no time to react to these appointments. I don't even think we need, I could check with Jennifer, but if the mayor wants to appoint a council, do we have to vote on that?
The mayor could independently appoint an advisory council. There's really no ordinance or resolution that addresses that. I believe it can be done. Traditionally, our boards are created by ordinance, but in this case, there's some flexibility in how that's accomplished.
Yeah, so I don't think we're being asked for any input. We're just being expected to vote. I'm a little uncomfortable with that, with no, like I said, I have a whole packet of information on everything else we voted on today, but no real explanation on this where I could study it or the public can study it. I think that inclusion, diversity, and civil rights, of course, are important, but the last council that we approved, I was misled on what that was going to be, and then I voted yes, so I feel a little uncomfortable with no true explanation in writing, so just my...
Councilmember Tuttle.
Thank you. I would like to echo Vice Mayor. It would be really helpful if we could maybe have some discussions about this before it comes to the bench, so that way we can ask questions in advance. It feels a little bit, to copy Councilmember Fry earlier, making sausage. And so I came with, and the only reason I knew about it is I saw it in the media, which is not usually the preferred way for how we hear about things and how we can make the best decisions. It would be great if we could hear about it, have just some discussions and some question time. But, you know, I was going to ask what are the purpose and the goal, and I heard you say to see what we're doing well, but really at the end of the day, if this council does its job, what does that mean and how is it being evaluated? You mentioned that there'll be appointment for a 3-month term, and then you'll reappoint, but then also will there be representation from all of the districts? That's something that I think is very important to make sure that we're really encapsulating what our entire community is like. I heard a few of the names, but I don't know them all. But, you know, when I think of inclusion, of course, I think of color and race, but I also think of the blind and visually impaired. I think of the elderly. They're often not included in our community in a thoughtful way. I think of Latino, Asian, mental health, LGBT, physically disabled, etc. And just to make sure that if we really are truly thinking about inclusion, that all of those groups are represented. And then also I just have a concern of, you know, the last thing that you can, the worst thing I think you can do is ask people for their opinion or their guidance and then not use it. There's nothing worse than starting up a committee to only listen, but then not have any action tied to it. So what if the committee makes recommendations that we can't fulfill? That could be really discouraging for the committee members, but then also cause some potential issues. I did speak with the police chief about this morning because I just had some concerns. My heart is aching for what's going on not in our city, but across our nation and the violence that we're seeing, and want to be extremely cautious to make sure that we don't do anything that could exacerbate that in any way. I completely recognize that there is hurt. There is hurt in our city, there's hurt in our nation that we absolutely need to address. And I applaud the mayor for being thoughtful and considerate and wanting to address it. But I also think that doing something quickly may not necessarily be the best way. We absolutely need to make sure that we do this right and we do this thoughtfully. So it's just going to be a real struggle for me to have this presented to me right now and then be expected to vote on it. I would appreciate maybe a little bit more time and a little bit more opportunity to ask questions and a little bit more time to have my questions answered. So just wanted to give my thoughts that in the future it would be very much appreciated if we could hear about these in advance and not just from the bench as we've heard today. Thank you.
So I'm going to speak to the concerns, and then I'll recognize the other people on the list. You don't have to vote for a council on diversity, inclusion, and civil rights if you think that we don't need more discussion on diversity, inclusion, and civil rights. If you are someone who wishes that I communicated better, then I'm sorry that I might have let you down. I will point out that in about 1 week, I will have been mayor for 6 months, and there are 3 people on this council who have never once stepped in my office and had a conversation with me. And let me put that into context. For those of you who don't know, my office is right by the bathroom, which means we have people who walk past my office 3 to 4 times a day when we're here, and at not once has one of these people, 2 of them who spoke today, came in and asked, "Hey, Mayor, what's going on?" I would have been happy to talk about this, but also I am busy going to rallies. I am busy being in touch with our community and feeling the pain that they feel that has led to this national discussion on inclusion, diversity, and civil rights. And I would have been happy to talk to you at one of those rallies if you were there. I would have been happy to talk to you if you were here yesterday when I was here. I would have been happy to talk to you if any one of the times when we were here together, you stepped in my office and asked to say, "Hey, what's going on?" Now, if you don't want to vote for this, then vote no, and that's fine. I'm not forcing anyone's arm, or twisting anyone's arm on a vote here, but I think it is important that we create something official that will give people a voice. And if there is someone on this list that you think, or someone should be added to this list, come and talk to me. Send me an email if you don't want to talk to me. If you don't want to come in my office, just send an email. I have open office hours. I come here every single day, and I am more than happy. You all have my cell number. You used to text me, call me, let me know what I can do to include you, but frankly, I gotta move forward because our community depends on it. Councilmember Bluebog.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to make my comments. This may have not have came to us exactly the way that we wanted it to, but I'm all for anything we can do to communicate in a nonviolent way. I don't want to see our police officers, our citizens, anyone in this city have to face any violence of any kind. I would much rather us try to share our words, share our discussions, and move forward in a more diplomatic way. So, you know, like I said, even though it may not have came to us exactly the way it did, I'm all for anything we can do in a nonviolent manner.
I call the question. Clerk will open the roll. Members will cast the vote.
I'm sorry, there's requests to speak?
Call the question is a non-debatable motion. Every member who's on the list had a chance to speak. I think it's better for us to move forward. With a result of 4 yeas to With a result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion does pass. I make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second to the motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor of adjourning, please do so. The result is 7 yeas and 0 nays. The motion does pass. Thank you.